Hey guys, Yamakiller here with a Eldrazi Tron deck tech video showing you exactly the ins and outs and how this deck list was built and how the deck functions. I'd like to start off with the mana base. It's a little bit straightforward, but it's always good to go over and make sure that we understand the founding principles of the deck, which is why it's called Eldrazi Tron. It's got 4 Eldrazi temples. These obviously double your mana for Eldrazi spells, which we'll see what Eldrazi spells we have later. And we have our Tron lands, 4 mines, 4 power plants, 4 towers. Just, have 4 of each because you want to be hitting Tron on turn 3 if you can. And it gets you up to 7 mana, and we have a lot of things to do with our mana in this deck. So it's just, classic why it's called Eldrazi Tron. These are the 18 lands, or 16 lands that based off of them. Now I'd like to talk about some of the not so necessarily known lands in the deck, which is 2 waste, pretty standard because of the fact that you need basics for Field of Ruin, Path to Exile, be able to beat Blood Moon, so on and so forth. The lands basically suck in most scenarios, but they're a necessary evil, sadly. And then we've got our utility lands. We've got 2 Blast Zones here, which are basically engineered explosives on your lands. Great to pick off Death Shadows, great to pick off Aether Vials, right as you play them down. You can also take them up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you've got loads of mana, and there's big permanents. Sometimes you got to take it up, and then you can sometimes just blast zone away some problematic permanents. Ensnaring Bridge, Planeswalkers. Sometimes your opponent just has a bunch of 2-drops, and you get to kill a bunch of 2-drops. It's just an all-around great utility land, and as well produces colorless mana for your Eldrazi. The second land is Cavern of Souls. Lots of Bant, Snow, or Blue-White X, Blue-Green X, Snow decks going around. A lot of counter spells, Archmage's Charm, Cryptic Command, Mana Leaks, Disdainful Strokes. Lets you get past all of them and lets you resolve your creatures, which are going to be very important in those matchups. Now the final 2 lands, Scavenger Grounds, deals with graveyard decks, Dredge, Dredgevine, any weird graveyard combo base deck, Storm type thing. Just a great land to be able to go get on the fly, and sometimes you get them against Tarmogoyfs, and you just get to destroy people in combat. So it's just a great, just like one of land to have. Another land is Tectonic Edge, allows you to destroy some Tron lands, a Celestial Colonnade. Sometimes you just take your opponent off their 4th land drop, and that's great. Some lands that are being omitted right now, Ghost Quarter, not too many Tron lands around where you need to be taking them off immediately, more Eldrazi Tron rather than Green Tron. Not many man lands going around as well. Some other lands is Cryptic Caves, lets you draw an extra card along with, there's the one that taps, it's 3 mana tap, draw a card if you have no cards in hand. Both of those are not as necessary, I feel like, both because Cryptic Caves is very slow, and the other land, the matches where it's usually useful in, it gets Field of Ruined very easily, and it's not that great. So let us move on from the mana base. I hope it gives you a better understanding of why we are playing these lands, and let's move on to our early game plays. Now, for turns 1 and 2, it's almost always setup based, unless you're starting off with 2 Eldrazi Temple. But usually it's set up either you're going for an Expedition map, picking up a 3rd Tron piece, an Eldrazi Temple, or so forth to develop your mana, or you're slamming a Chalice on 1, which in certain matchups, absolutely amazing. Death Shadow, Burn, Storm, all great matchups to put it down on 1 on. But some matchups not so great. Sometimes you're playing against Goblins, they have Aether Vial, which is basically all you can hit. They've got Cavern of Souls and such. Sometimes you're playing against, Eldrazi Tron. Basically no 1-drops, not great. So it's really a polarizing card, and sometimes it's hard to know when you're supposed to be playing it and for what number, but it's usually going to be very good in the matchups. And then you've got finally a Mind Stone. This allows you, it's one of those cards that you can bridge the gap between 2 and 4, which is big, usually for your card called Thought-Knot Seer. It allows you to bridge the gap between there, bridge your mana gaps really well, and it's just kind of like a 9th card that allows you to do something in the early game, because without any early game effects, it's going to be difficult for you to bridge the gap to your bigger spells. Now, let us move on to our Eldrazi Creatures. This is the main reason why it's called Eldrazi Tron. We've got 4 Reality Smashers, 4 Thought-Knot Seers, 4 Matter Reshapers. Reshaper, great value card, allows you to rebuy, as it allows you to redraw a card, or even put something onto the battlefield, potentially, and applies early aggression in certain matchups like Storm, Control, Amulet Titan, where you just need to be getting onto the board as quickly as possible and applying aggression. Most people like to laugh at Matter Shaper, saying it's a really shitty card, and why would you ever play Matter Shaper in Modern? I've beaten my fair share of people by going turn 2 Matter Shaper, turn 3 Matter Shaper. Sometimes you just gotta delver some people out. The next card to talk about is we've got Thought-Knot Seer. It interacts greatly with your opponent's hand, obviously, because it allows to take a card out of it. It's basically great in every single matchup. I don't think there's a single matchup where I think Thought-Knot Seer is bad. Some people don't like it against some grindy decks like Jund, but I think it's just great in basically every single matchup. When you get to play it on turn 2, there's basically no creatures that interact with it well. You get to take the card out of your opponent's hand. Almost always they can't deal with it immediately, and you get to take the card that deals with it. It's just an all-around great card, good against combo, aggro, control. It's essentially the best card in your deck in almost every situation. Next, the final Eldrazi we have in our deck that is reasonably castable is Reality Smasher. Just kills your opponents quickly, kills opponents, great blocker in certain scenarios where you gotta block like a Gurmag Angler. And it's very hard to deal with. It almost always 2-for-1s because they either need a double block, a removal spell mix, so they have to discard a card, and it just trample haste. It just is a great card because it's low costed because of your Eldrazi temples and just kills your opponents quickly. So when you need to force down the aggro plan, kill a planeswalker, kill your opponent, it's a great card for that. And it is essentially cost 1 or 2 less because of the card Eldrazi Temple, which is a soul land for our Eldrazi spells. And that's why they're so great in this deck, because we've got 4 Eldrazi Temple and Urza lands to be able to power them out. Now I'd like to go on to more of our removal / value package. We've got Karn the Great Creator, which I'll talk about the sideboard for, as I've talked about in many of my decks, which I've played with Karn the Great Creator of. Great value card, sometimes just hoses your opponent's deck because they're artifact based, and it's just all around good in that way. I'll expand on how good Karn is in this deck once we get to the sideboard to show its plethora of options that it gets to give to our deck. Finally, for the Planeswalkers, we've got Ugin the Ineffable, makes all of our colorless spells cost 2 less, which is essentially our entire deck. Allows us to do some nuts turns with Karn the Great Creator, just spewing out our hand. It's +1 card advantage, -3 deals with basically any permanent. It's just an all-around great value card, and when we're playing Urza lands, a great card to have, and surprisingly pretty easy to cast even without the Urza lands, as we're going to generate a good chunk of mana over the game. Now let's move on to our removal spells, which we've got to Dismember. Just great all-around removal spell, especially when you're playing colorless. Don't really have options to many good removal spells besides Dismember, so just got to put into good answer to things. We've got Warping Whale, deals with small creatures, sometimes snags a sorcery, and sometimes bridges the gap between your 2 mana and 4 mana to get to Thought-Knot Seer on turn 3. Very versatile card. Sometimes it does nothing, but at worst, you're bridging mana gap, or you're just making a 1/1 jumper. Usually is not just completely dead in the matchup. Finally, All is Dust with our Urza lands as well as Eldrazi Temple. It can be easily cast very quickly. Just wipes up the whole board of your opponent. Doesn't deal anything to yourself. All around great card. Can't play too many of these because it is 7 mana, so we don't have Urzas or Temples. It's going to be pretty hard to cast. But when it is cast, it's almost always going to be good. Finally, our last 4 cards, we got 3 Walking Ballistas with Urza lands. It's just going to be great. Pick off small creatures. Kill your opponent. Kill planeswalkers. Gives you a mana sink. It's great with the Urza lands. Not much more to say about that. And finally, our top end Ulamog, which I'm flaking, or not flaking, I'm floundering on. There's you could be playing Ulamog, you could be playing Emrakul, you could be playing Endbringer, just some sort of card to use with a lot of mana that is good against control. Ulamog is the card I'm playing now. I haven't really drawn it very much. I'm not sure how good it is exactly in this deck list, but I have been impressed when I have drawn it, and I know other people have been liking it as well. So that's the main deck right now. There are some changes you can make. You can add some more top end like Ulamog type spells. You can add more Dismembers. You can change some numbers around. But all around, I do really like this main deck, and I've been doing pretty well with it for winning a couple leagues. I've been having some problems with the mulliganing aspect of the deck, where sometimes you just got to mulligan to 3. But that's like kind of with Tron decks. Sometimes you just mulligan. Sometimes your hands don't line up correctly, and you just kind of get screwed. But that's what you take when you play Tron lands. Sometimes your hands are clunky and you can't do much. But sometimes you get a turn 3 Tron people, play Karn the Great Creator and get them, or play Thought-Knot Seer Matter Shaper and just get to own your opponent. So, it's gives and takes. Now I want to move on to the sideboard. We've got here a bunch of different sideboard cards, mainly of which is our Karn sideboard. Now we've got 2 cards that aren't part of the Karn sideboard. We've got Spatial Contortion here. It's just another good removal spell, and in weird scenarios, sometimes you just get to kill your opponent a turn quicker. Because it's +3, -3, sometimes you get to throw it on a Reality Smasher to get through lethal, sometimes you throw it on a Thought-Knot Seer, but mainly it's just used removal for small creatures like Devoted Druid, Goblin Guide, and other random small threats that you got to take out. Now, the rest of this is essentially a Karn sideboard. We've got 10, or is this 11 one-ofs? And one more 2-of that can also be gotten with Karn. Now this is basically your graveyard hate package. Relic of Progenitus usually is a card you get to bring in the graveyard matchups while leaving 2 cards, Tormod's Crypt, Grafdigger's Cage, for the graveyard hate. Very versatile. Relic of Progenitus can be used to redraw. Grafdigger's Cage can both deal with graveyard hate as well as devoted druid decks, Collected Company, and so on and so forth. Tormod's Crypt, mainly just a graveyard hate card, but it's 0 mana, so if you get up to 4 mana, you can both get your graveyard hate card and play Karn the Great Creator in the same turn. Next, we've got our another Walking Ballista. We got 3 in the main deck, 1 in the sideboard. Great against taking off small creatures. Ending the game quickly. I explained it in the first game, or in our main deck, pretty sufficiently on why it is such a great card. Sundering Titan we've got for amulet decks mostly, or 3-color decks. Sometimes just gonna take 3 to 4 lands out. It's just great there. Gotta take a quick sip of water. My throat's getting dry talking straight for 11 minutes, but hopefully I can finish out the rest of this video. And next we want to go on to our value-based cards we get out of the sideboard. Mystic Forge allows us to draw a bunch of cards off the top of our deck, filter our top of the deck as well. Sky Sovereign, removal spell for creatures, planeswalkers, and then gets to be a 6/5 and get in and do more removal and creature and planeswalker-based removal. Wormcoil Engine, great against Jund, non-path-based control decks, as well as Burn. Gets you a lot of life, hard to deal with, and it's a great value card. Snaring Bridge, great against aggro decks, or things that try to play a lot to the board and then get you that way. Empty your hand and then just kind of lock them out. 2 Pithy Needle X-type effects, good against Planeswalkers, Devoted Druid, other such things. And finally, Liquid Metal Coating, along with Karn the Great Creator. Since it turns off artifacts, you can turn a land or something else into an artifact, plus it, destroy it, or just make it so a certain Planeswalker can't use its abilities, or a creature can't use its abilities, or some sort of permanent can't use its abilities while you have Karn out. I hope this was all sufficient in telling you why the sideboard is so great and how Karn can be such a different, versatile card in many different matchups because of the sideboard. And I hope this sufficiently gave you an idea of why I think Eldrazi Tron is good and could at many times be a tier 1 deck in the metagame, and I think right now is moving up in the ranks and being able to deal with most of the decks in the metagame as well as do well in it. If you guys like this deck tech or want to see more videos, I've got a lot more videos on my channel. YamaKillerMTG here, so if you guys want to comment, subscribe if you like the video and all that such. Description below you'll see my Twitch and Twitter. Make sure to follow there, you'll see when I go live. I've been playing Eldrazi Tron recently. Hopefully you'll get to see some live gameplay and ask me some questions, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.